Sarah, what was your reaction to what Russell had to say?
I have been one of the biggest fans of Russ. I feel like I've been driving the bus.
This show, we got them spread everywhere.
Right?
On the desk. Not me as much. I mean,
Nick is.
But
I give him credit for the type of athlete he is.
Yes.
But he's not aware enough for me of himself, who he is and the type of player he is.
Well, that's what those comments showed me, because he was going back through all the criticisms each year that he had faced. I think the one thing you always think about as a player, I think about this having played and then years later when I was playing pickup ball and you're running around and getting some runs in with guys. As you get older, the one thing that you can always continue to develop is how to think the game. Some of the best players, it's not just about playing the game. It's not just about developing skills and the ways in which you need to improve, of which Russ brought up, being a better shooter. And hopefully he will come back a better shooter. But a part of it is, what shots are you taking? How are you attacking defenses? How are you learning how to pick apart schemes? Because I think what we've seen throughout a lot of these playoffs is that there's not a whole lot of variation in the ways in which you need to stop Russell Westbrook. And I think that's a major factor of why they've been bounced the last 3 years. You can't tell me that a team with Paul George, and by the way, Paul George, he didn't look right, and, you know, the injury, that plays a factor. He still led the team in scoring. He played more than 40 minutes. I mean, he still put up the type of numbers that you would anticipate.
29, 9, and 4. And, I mean, he was on 44% shooting, so a little below where he'd like to be. But
so that wasn't the factor. But for Russ, he is someone, I don't even care so much about the dialogue and the conversation we've had about how he's handled the media or how he's handled postgame. That aside, I just think at some point you need to look yourself in the mirror and say, why are people saying these things about me? Why do they continue to pick apart my game? Yeah, I think he's being sarcastic.
I'm going to come back and shoot better. Was that sarcastic? Or do you think he actually heard it and wants to do something about it?
Well, you look at the percentages. I mean, how could you not? You look at the percentages not only throughout the season, but in the postseason, what he shot not only from the field. I think this was his best season of percentage at the rim. I think he finished well at the rim. But overall, I hope that's something that he takes into account. But again, it's the flip side of things. It's not just about the numbers. It's not just about percentages. It's not just about how many assists you have throughout the course of a year, throughout the course of a postseason. How is that translating into wins? And it's not translating into wins for your team.
Well, there's two elements for Russell. One that he acknowledged there, one he did not, that he has to drastically improve on. One is the shooting. Now, when he says, I got criticized about assists and I led the league in assists, that is true. And I've also been a big Russell Westbrook supporter. But Russell Westbrook detractors will take that quote and say, yeah, exactly what we said. Like that you are so focused on your individual numbers that you can be a selfish player even while leading the league in assists. Now, I don't think that's totally fair, but I also don't think you can simply say I led the league in assists, therefore my usage rate is not way out of proportion. Therefore, I'm playing smart, efficient basketball. But yeah, if it is as easy as, okay, I'm going to come back next year and be a better shooter, then I wish you'd have done it 5 years ago, but amen, go do it.
Well, he's also a volume shooter. Like when people make comparisons of, oh, maybe later in his career he can improve his shot, and maybe he can, but when people bring up Jason Kidd's name or they bring up other, those guys weren't taking that many. They realized their limitations. They realized they weren't a better shooter, so they weren't taking the quantity of shots until they improved that aspect of their game.
And it also meant they were taking easier and smarter ones.
Yes.
Like when you're taking fewer threes, it's because they're the unguarded ones. They're the corner threes. Russ doesn't take a lot of those corner threes because he has the ball in his hand so much, so he doesn't get the easiest three. But the other thing Russ has to improve on, and I feel like this is a point you've been making for as long as I've known you, C, is the attitude that I love from him on the court, the brooding anger, it extends everywhere. And while I don't care about the media stuff, everyone that covers that team in their season postmortem has talked about how the organization has taken on his personality in a negative way. The organization, the locker room is tense. The locker room is on edge. The locker room has a brooding feel to it that it does not win, that it doesn't if he's out. When Paul George was taking over the reins, they said there was a distinctive shift in the locker room when Paul George got hurt and Russ took back control of that team. And it was pregame and postgame, and I don't know that that is the best way to approach your job, if you will, over a long 82-game season. I think by the time you get to the end of it, some guys are worn out mentally. And so those are the two things, the shooting and his approach to the season, that Russ has to improve on to be the player that I believe he can be and should be.
And you shouldn't care about the media stuff, because it's all a part of what he's supposed to do. Because part of his leadership is they're not asking those backup players the questions after the game. So your job is to give a message that is consistent with the organization and the team. So Russ, he suffocates this team. It's hard to play with him, not only on the court, but off the court. Only time I see Russ smile and light is when he talks about his kids. And he needs more than that. All right? So this energy that he plays with, typically the thing that is the thing going to get you your success, it's also going to be the thing that lead to your demise. And with Russ, it doesn't make sense for him to consider. Now he said, okay, I'm going to improve my shooting. You shot 36% in the playoffs. All right? Won't you be a little more aware of the shots that you're taking? Because I believe he can get a lot better, because I played a lot of basketball. I'm still playing in 2 leagues. But I can't play the way I used to be able to play. I used to be able to above the rim, 38-inch vertical. I'm dunking on everyone in there. Man, I got to try to get me some easy layups. I got to try to get me a pin down, get a pick, get me an open shot. I got young guys chasing after me. I can't do the things that I used to be able to do. I'm aware of that when the game starts. Russ is not aware. A good shot 3 years ago in the NBA is not a good shot. Russ's favorite shot is a million miles an hour. Just wait a second. 1,000,000 miles an hour. He drives straight at you. He goes to the right or left elbow and pulls up for a 15 to 17-foot diagonal jump shot. That might have been a good shot 5 years ago. But in NBA analytics, all these smart people I got around me, they will tell you that is not a good shot. And for him not to be aware of that.
Well, I was going to say, whether it's a good shot or not, too, everyone knows. You know that. I know that. So you can't tell me that the scouting report isn't this is exactly what he's going to do.
So if he doesn't change his game, and all his shots are these shots that used to be good shots and they're not, is this the next Carmelo Anthony? Can he play himself out of the league?
He's not at that place.
No, that's a little drastic.
Forget the, I don't want to say forget, but set the Carmelo thing aside. What he is, if he doesn't change his game, is one of the worst contracts in basketball. There's John Wall, who's got 4 years, 170 left, and a popped Achilles and overweight. And then people that think now all of a sudden I'm being too harsh on Russ after always supporting him, I just want to know, if he comes back the same player, what good player would you trade 1-for-1 for him?
Well, this is
when he's making $40 million a year.
But the contract is a perfect point of what does Oklahoma City do now? I mean, they are stuck in a position of which they're so far over the cap. They don't have a lot of moves they can make. And I wouldn't put this all on Russell. I mean, yeah, is it decision making? Is it how he shoots it? Well, part of it, what do you do with a guy that doesn't shoot very well and can play make? You put shooters around him. They don't have shooters. So I would also attribute some of the ways in which he does make decisions on the court a product of the fact that the personnel around him is just a bunch of, you got a lot of tweeners, a lot of athletic guys, a lot of guys that they have put the roster together predicated on how they play defense. And so that's where you're stuck, and there's not a lot of moves at this point they can make given their financial situation.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.